Hello once again, audience. It is me, your boy, TPT, coming at you not live and not from Twitch TV. Once again, it is a shocker. I am not dead, guys. I am alive. I've just been tremendously busy with real life. I have university, I've got work, I've got some personal business projects I've been working on. I'm also now treasurer of one of my university clubs. So I've been busy, that's really the only thing to it. I'm not going to pretend to have excuses because, I only do this for the fun anyway. It's not like I'm getting paid. But anyhow, so today I wanted to discuss a particular topic in the EU4 Advanced Guides, which I have not covered yet, and something which I definitely feel like I should cover, as it's quite important. And that topic, of course, is advisors. Personally, I consider advisors to be one of the most important parts of this game because of the monarch point generation that they provide. It is hugely important for what for what you do in expanding your country. As realistically, let's be honest here, monarch points are pretty much the most important thing you can have for a country. Monarch points solve all of your problems. They solve your tech problems, they solve your development problems, they solve your overextension problems, they solve everything, pretty much everything. As a result of that, advisors, being essentially trading cash for monarch points, as well as some other bonuses as well, are naturally an extremely important part of the EU4 country's economy as a result of that. Now, obviously, all level 1 advisors give the same amount of monarch points, all level 2 advisors give the same amount of monarch points, so that's not exactly what we're here to talk about today. The first thing I'd like to discuss is the most important advisors in terms of monarch points. And frankly, I think this screen right here is a pretty good summary. The most important advisors, particularly later on in the game, earlier in the game, admin is definitely pretty strong, but later on it does definitely scale off a little bit, particularly in multiplayer. Well, obviously in single player it does definitely remain useful for a lot longer, as you can blob for significantly longer. But specifically in multiplayer, it does tend to fall off quite a bit. Once you reach a certain threshold, obviously depending on how many players you've got, because the more players you've got, the faster you will stop being able to blob. Now you may be asking, of course, why is military and diplomatic advisors the best and most important ones? Well, one, military obviously gives you more military monarch points, which means you can unlock military tech faster, which is incredibly important. You unlock military ideas faster, which are also incredibly important. Just a little note here, by the way, as a result of quantity ideas nerfing national manpower modifier and land force limit modifier by half of both of them respectively, obviously used to be 50% and 50%, I would actually say that quality ideas have become a much more important early game tech. I'm just going to put this in here real quickly, obviously, because I can't be bothered to update my original video. Quantity is still really, really good, but obviously I feel like quality has definitely edged out, and I will admit I'm biased. I've always loved quality. Anyhow, though, like I said, they provide you with military technology, they provide you with military ideas, and obviously when you are playing in multiplayer, you will pretty much have the maximum number of military ideas that you possibly can, and as a result of that, you will just be using up military points like nobody's business. On top of that, of course, it does provide you with a significant amount of manpower, which naturally is incredibly important as well. And then lastly, of course, you can use it for sieging down forts. You can use it for recruiting generals, which obviously provides you the generals, but it also provides you with bonus army professionalism, which means even more manpower. Although they have massively nerfed slack and recruiting standards, which is unfortunate. But even still, regardless of that, I still think professionalism is really, really good, even though slack and recruiting standards definitely is not as good anymore. The next reason, of course, is why diplomatic power and advisors are the second most important, obviously specifically the advisors, is because of the fact that obviously once you get to the late game, exponentially more of your income will be coming from trade and production as opposed to tax. So naturally, the diplomatic power is more important than administrative in that case. As, you know, pretty much administrative, all real administrative is really good for is stability, coring, and tax dev. And once again, obviously, diplomatic dev, you know, based production is much more better than it is significantly better, like very, very significantly, particularly in the late game, better than your production, than your administrative dev. Coring doesn't matter as much when you're no longer able to blob, so obviously you can take your time with expanding. And obviously stability really isn't that hard to keep up. You know, you don't need like a huge amount of admin points. It's not like you're losing stability every other day of the week. So that's why that is more important. Next, obviously, we'll go on to the type of advisors. First of all, we'll start off with the administrative advisors. You have the artist, the inquisitor, the master of the mint, the natural scientist, the philosopher, the theologian, and the treasurer. So I will rank these according to my personal preferences. Firstly, natural scientist is one of my favorites, once again, particularly in the late game. That production efficiency can be a huge increase in your income and can often actually pay for the cost of the advisor himself, particularly once you start blobbing. You know, even if a level 5 advisor is costing you like 27 ducats a month, if he can be generating you just huge sums of money. On top of, obviously, you know, he would be giving you 5 admin points a month. I also am quite a fan of the Master of the Mint. He's probably my second personal favorite, with that yearly inflation reduction. Definitely not as important. He is more situational, but when you are in a situation when inflation is rising, he is probably one of my favorite advisors. But again, he is a little bit more niche. As obviously, you know, the country that I'm playing is right now, Norway. You know, I'm not really near any particular gold, so I don't really need to worry about inflation right now. But if I was playing as something like Bohemia, Austria, Hungary, and such, I would definitely place him quite highly. Also, along with the theologian for the -2 national unrest. -2 national unrest, that's a lot of goddamn unrest. You know, that is essentially the equivalent of +2 stability, and that can really assist with stopping your rebellions from spawning. Then obviously after that, you kind of honestly got everything else. Treasurer, the extra tax modifier is decent in the early game, but it definitely falls off quite late. He can still pay for himself at earlier levels, but generally it's just not as much as you're gaining from the production efficiency. The philosopher at yearly prestige, realistically, once you get to like the middle game, prestige is never going to be an issue, so he basically just jacks shit. The artist, -10% stability cost modifier. As I literally just said earlier in this video, realistically, you're not really gone through a lot of stability, so minus 10 admin points, because by the way, it's -10% of base cost, not modified cost, so you're only saving 10 admin points every time you click this button when you use him, and frankly, that's just jack shit. And then, obviously, lastly, you have got the Inquisitor. 2% missionary strength can be reasonably useful, but again, it's a bit situational. You know, once again, obviously, we have a fully Catholic nation here. There's nothing particularly to worry about. You know, if I started eating up this Orthodox land, then definitely, you know, he might be a little more useful, but just, you know, a lot of the time he is very situational, quite like the Master of the Mint, but he's less useful in his situations. Next, of course, we have the diplomatic advisors. You know, this does definitely have some of my favorite ones in this category. Also, by the way, I will let you know, I will be posting a link to the EU4 Paradox wiki, which does contain a list of all types of advisors, just in case you're curious, as obviously, no one has the advisor capacity to show every single one of them. And I am playing an Iron Man because I'm not a bitch. I'm kidding. Iron Man's not for everybody. Completely understandable if you don't want to do it. Anyhow, so diplomatic advisors. Naturally, number one is the trader with that 10% trade efficiency. That is just too sexy right there. This man frequently pays for himself very significantly. Once again, particularly as you head towards the later game, he is definitely one of the best advisors in the game, personally. You do also have, I would say next would be the Statesman and the Diplomat. Probably the Diplomat more than the Statesman. Diplomat, 20% improved relations, very handy in the early game, as obviously improved relations does mean that your aggressive expansion will tick down faster, should I say. If you're in somewhere like the Holy Roman Empire, that is as good as gold. You know, it is incredibly useful. 20% too, that is quite a respectable modifier. That's about like, I think it was about 0.6 or something extra per year, which doesn't sound like it, but a lot, but obviously does add up in the long run. And I very much like that advisor. Then just slightly below him, but still in a pretty decent tier, is the Statesman, Diplomatic Reputation +1. Really good if you've got a lot of vassals. Obviously, you know, if you want to annex them quicker, Diplomatic Reputation is the way to go. So I personally am quite a fan of him as well, but he is much more situational. So I do definitely rank him lower. It's just that all the other diplomatic advisors are kind of garbage, so that's why I have him up that highly. You have got the Spy Master, which is 25% spy network construction. That is once again, pretty useful in the HRE, where obviously you need a base of 30 spy network to be able to fabricate a claim. So naturally, you know, you are going above that 25 threshold without any modifiers. And as a result of that, it does mean you're more likely to get caught, and it just becomes a big pain in the butt. So I find the Spy Master to, again, particularly in the HRE, just be basically a good quality of life advisor to have. You've got Naval Reformer, which is morale of navies. If you're not playing as England, this doesn't mean jack shit. You know, it's pretty much useless unless you're playing as a naval power specifically, in which case it is obviously very useful, but that is incredibly niche, more so than pretty much any of the other advisors. You've got the Navigator for 20% colonial range and the Colonial Governor for 10% tariffs. A little bit of extra colonial range obviously can be useful if you're really trying to rush towards Africa and Asia, but generally obviously 20% isn't going to be the difference between life and death, particularly when obviously your exploration is already giving you +50, and hey, if you're playing as Norway, you get an extra +33% from your very first idea. And then tariffs is just objectively garbage, probably one of the worst advisors in the game, because frankly it doesn't do crap. Okay, just never take a colonial governor. Take any advisor over a colonial governor, I beg of you. Okay, and then lastly we get to my favorite section overall, military. Okay, now first of all, hands down, you've got two advisors. One, Commandant, probably the best advisor in the game. 5% discipline, particularly in those late wars. He is just incredibly useful. Okay, 5% discipline is so huge. And on top of that, if you do have a level 3 discipline advisor, I would suggest not running him during peace times, only run him during player wars, because of the fact that obviously he can provide you with an event, which is Inspirational Leader, which gives you an additional 10% discipline for 20 years, which is just, once again, it is just absolutely insane how incredibly useful that event is. However, you can only get it once. So really, I would honestly try and avoid using him unless you are in a very, very important war, because that is, again, that is also one of the best events in the game that you can get, if not the best, honestly. Next, you have Army Reformer, which I rank just below Commandant, which is 10% morale of armies. Definitely probably the second strongest advisor in the game, honestly. Followed by third is the Trader. But yeah, you know, morale of armies, pretty self-explanatory, incredibly useful, particularly in those tough, fights. And generally, I rank him pretty highly. You've then got the Master Recruiter, which is 10% national manpower modifier. Once again, speaks for himself. You know, extra manpower means more troops to throw at the enemy, means higher chance of winning. Then you've got, I would say, probably the Army Organizer, which is land force limit modifier. Not particularly useful during AI wars, but can be very useful in player wars, particularly closely fought ones. If you're already stomping your enemy, he's probably not very necessary. Obviously, in those close fights, 20,000 versus 20,000 becomes 20,000 versus 22,000. That can definitely make the difference between a loss and a victory, depending obviously on how close the battle is. But he's definitely can be useful, just not as much as obviously the morale or discipline, and probably not as much as the manpower either. But that is probably a little bit of personal preference. I just love the manpower more. Lastly, we have fort defense plus 20% and reinforced speed plus 33%. Obviously, fort defense is pretty situational unless you're playing something like, for example, Switzerland, when you're stacking fort defense. Realistically, the other ones are just better, okay? They're just better, okay? 5% discipline, 10% army morale. Just, why bother with the others, okay? That's pretty much the explanation. Reinforced speed can be useful if you're, just playing against some AI or something. But again, discipline, morale, enough said. So yeah, overall, I'd say the three best advisors in each category would be the natural scientist for production efficiency plus 10%, the trader for 10% trade efficiency, and the commandant for 5% discipline. I would say those are overall the three best advisors. And again, obviously keep in mind, don't run the commandant during peacetime. That's really pretty much all there is to say about advisors. I don't think there's just too complicated. There are definitely certain events that you can get based around advisors. That I won't go too much into detail, but I believe it's Master of the Mint and one of the other ones. If you run them simultaneously at higher levels, you can get an event in which both of them leave your court, and you can get 400 monarch points, 200 admin, and 200 diplomatic points, which can be incredibly useful when you're trying to catch up on tech. Either way, though, frankly, when it comes to advisors, advisor cost is probably one of the best modifiers in the game because it means that you can run even more advisors. And frankly, I do know several players in multiplayer that do run advisors, even if it does actually cost them money in their economy, purely because of the monarch points that those advisors provide. Because whilst I have given you a list, obviously, of the tiers of the bonuses, I would say, like, realistically, the monarch points are the most important part of the advisors. All of the bonuses are secondary. The monarch points are the most important part, and I can't stress that enough. It's just that obviously because they all provide the same amount of monarch points each, you can't really rank them via that. Anyway, guys, I hope you really have enjoyed. I hope this has been educational for you. I might make some more videos here and there. I was burnt out of EU4 for a very long time. I hadn't really played for probably about 6 months. Which is one of the reasons why I stopped making videos. I just wasn't really enjoying the game anymore because I had just played it too much. I mean, after 3,000 hours, you do definitely feel a little bit of burnout. Anyway, guys, like I said, I hope you have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Be sure to hit the like button if you did appreciate it. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to, but that would also be appreciated. As again, I do try and make videos whenever I can, and I am hoping to try and get a little bit back into it as well. As obviously I have definitely been slacking the past several months. But frankly, I do that sometimes. Anyway, guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.